Thank you so much for being with us. We do want to talk about that historic vote. It appears it's going to happen today in the House. But first, let's talk about appropriations, because you need to keep the government running. It looks like you're going to vote through the appropriations. What jumps out at you from what we're looking at? I guess it's 1,400 pages worth of a bill here.
Yeah, well, finally we have all the spending bills put together. It should have been done back on September 30th, so it's taken a long time, but it's a lot better than just having what's called a continuing resolution, meaning the spending from last year, because we can put reforms in there and we can be sure that we're providing the military what they need, which is a slight increase in spending now that we've got the military back on its feet. But it also has some other good things in it. One thing in the appropriations bills themselves is the tax extenders package, which provides more business certainty, helps farmers a lot. Our ag community has been hit really hard, as you know, by tough weather, but also this tariff battle. And this provides the ag community a few very specific things that they wanted badly. And so this helps in our rural areas, helps with regard to our farmers. It also helps with business certainty in other ways, because it provides some clarity on issues. There's a provision in there regarding craft brewers and craft distillers and vineyards and so on, where they had an excise tax increase that was going to hit them hard in January. Would have meant a lot of lost jobs. So that's good that we've provided some assistance there to be sure that excise tax relief continues. And then just general clarification. There are certain things in the tax bill that weren't actually very clear, particularly, again, in the rural areas. This is helpful on broadband deployment, because there was something called the Rural Act that was included that will help to say that co-ops can now provide broadband access. So a number of good things in that legislation that help in terms of business certainty. And then finally, there is the Secure Act, which is a piece of legislation that has to do with retirement. And it's a good deal for small businesses, because it lets them band together to provide retirement plans and lower their administrative costs, lower their liability. It also helps with regard to seniors not to have to take money out of the IRA and pay taxes on it at age 70 and a half, but rather bumps it up a couple years and then says they can continue to contribute if they're still working. So there's some good things in there that help business certainty, help our farmers, and help in terms of retirement savings.
On the Secure Act specifically, that's good news potentially for small businesses. Also, it's, as I understand it, intended to start addressing the undersaving of Americans for their retirement. Give us a couple examples how that happens. It reforms some of the 401k rules, as I understand it. It reforms how much money you can put away for how long.
Yeah, it does about 20 different things that basically says we want you to save more for your own retirement. Right now, we have a real problem with savings, particularly my generation, the baby boom generation, is not saving enough for retirement, so it allows people to put a little more away for retirement. It also helps small businesses to be able to offer plans, because we've seen over the years that the biggest problem is in smaller businesses. As we've increased 401ks in larger businesses, increasingly those employees who work in the smaller companies are being left behind, so it gives them a larger tax credit to be able to put more money aside for 401k. It also helps in some other ways that are important for part-time workers. One of the issues that we found is that that's one of the areas where there is less and less savings, and retirement savings in particular. So it encourages companies to provide part-time workers with savings by allowing them to qualify with fewer hours. So there are a number of things here that are helpful to try to get people to save more for retirement, which is a huge issue right now in our country. And by the way, in terms of the economy, it also helps because it increases the savings rate.
So let's turn back to that historic vote that appears will happen on the House side, the other side today, and it appears that they will vote out 2 articles of impeachment. If so, that means that you're going to have to be a juror at some point in a trial, looks like in January on the other side. As a juror, I don't expect you to take a position. You're a distinguished graduate of the University of Michigan Law School. You would not take a position on something like that. But what, if anything, might change your mind?
Well, you know, I've listened carefully to the hearings, and obviously seen a lot of reports and read a lot of testimony. And I have said from the start that we ought to be transparent about what happened. This all comes out of, as you know, a conversation with the president of Russia, the president of Ukraine, and the president of the United States. That transcript is now out there. People can see what it says. I don't think that calling on a foreign government to help investigate someone who was going to become a political rival potentially is a good thing. I've said that. But I've also said that that doesn't rise to the level of removing a president from office. And I have seen no additional evidence since then that would convince me of that. So that's how I go into it, saying what I've heard so far, I don't see the evidence that leads to that. However, as you say, I am a juror, and I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm listening, and we will continue to hear what the House managers, which is the Democrats, will present. We'll also hear what the president's team will present, because now they'll have a chance to present their side of of the argument. So we'll see what happens. Here we are, David, in the middle of a re-election. So the American people have the opportunity to look at all this, see it all transparently, and be able to make a decision themselves. I think that should be taken into account, too. In Ohio, we'll be voting in less than 3 months. We've got presidential primaries coming up. We've got a presidential debate on us right now. We're already kind of into the presidential campaign. So my hope is that that will be considered as well. Although I would be surprised if the House does not vote for impeachment today, from what I've heard.
Senator, in addition to being a senator from Ohio, in addition to being a director of OMB, you were also the United States Trade Representative at one point. We have the USMCA, which needs to get passed. We've heard from Mitch McConnell, your majority leader, saying you're not going to take it up until after the trial in the Senate. Does that pose certain risks? As the longer this goes on, people are going to find more and more things to object to, either from the right or from the left, frankly.
Well, I suppose, although this agreement is very popular, and the reason is it's a replacement for NAFTA, which is the existing agreement between Canada and Mexico that's 25 years old and outdated, and so it improves it in a number of ways. And some people have expressed concerns about USMCA from the right and the left, but I think very few of them would say that it's a worse agreement than the status quo, which is what you have if you vote against it. And the reason it's a better agreement is it opens up more markets. I mentioned the ag community earlier. They're very excited about this because it increases access for dairy products, for individual commodities, for wheat, as an example, into Canada. So there's some very positive things for the ag community. It also helps in terms of intellectual property protection, which is important to us. A big thing in here is that it has new digital protection. So the digital economy wasn't around 25 years ago, and so there's no provisions in the current NAFTA accord. And for my home state of Ohio, we do a lot of trade with Canada and Mexico. Canada, by far #1 trading partner. A lot of it's digital. A lot of it is people selling things online, and right now they're not protected. The tariffs can be assessed to this as compared to the USMCA, which doesn't allow tariffs to be put on digital economy, and it increases the threshold for customs duties to be applied, so it reduces the burdens, reduces the costs, and basically just provides protections that aren't there now. So, Senator, also, it has labor and environmental protections that are enforceable. So it's a better agreement than the status quo. Yeah,
excuse me, but Senator, finally, what do the people of Ohio care about? We in the media talk with you lawmakers, and we have our own ideas, our own questions. Yeah. But when you go back to Ohio, what's the #1 thing they think about?
Well, you know, you and I just talked about 4 pretty big things that Congress is dealing with right now. We talked about the spending bills finally coming together and what's in there. That is very important to a lot of Ohioans. For our military bases, as an example, there were some huge wins. We talked about the tax extenders and the tax relief that's provided there and the certainty that's provided. They care about that, a lot of small business owners. I mentioned the craft brewers and the farmers, but so many other people care about that. We talked about retirement savings and the importance of people being able to save for their retirement. One of the top issues that you see in the polls constantly is people nervous about whether they're going to save enough, whether they're going to outlive their retirement savings. And then we talked about the fact that we can expand jobs and trade. This USMCA will create about 170,000 plus new jobs. So frankly, I hear about that stuff a lot more than I hear about impeachment when I'm home. And yet, thanks to you've had it on the show this morning, but I read very little about it in the media. I read a lot about impeachment in the media. So I think people have kind of made their mind up about this president, and they'll have a chance to vote on that very soon. But really what people care about is, kitchen table issues and how it's affecting them and their family.
It's really helpful. Thank you, Senator. Always is good to have you on. That's Senator Rob Portman.
Thanks, David.
From Ohio. Alex?